The meaning of life. How do we live? Part 2. Over time, I approached the question of how to live from a different angle. I asked myself, why is this question so difficult, after all? What's so difficult about it? This awakened new thoughts in me, which soon led to this question. What needs to change to make this question easier? Damn. It suddenly became clear why it was so difficult to answer this question. To answer it accurately, I must know everything, I must be God. Let's think about it. Our human mind is limited. Our technology is proof of this. My computer is stronger than me in arithmetic. Its tiny processor can handle a huge number of tasks that my much larger brain can't. My hard drive contains more information than I can remember in a lifetime. Of course, in many areas my brain is superior to a computer processor, but the general idea is clear. There are intellectual limits to what our heads are capable of. I asked myself a lot of interesting questions, trying to take a fresh look at it. Can the mind comprehend the limits of the mind? If superintelligent aliens arrive on Earth, what will they find the limits of human intelligence to be? What can my brain definitely not do? What would change if I were much smarter than I am now? How could I live differently? What parts of my life would a more intelligent being consider foolish, redundant, or dangerous? If a more intelligent being, clearly understanding the limits of my intellect, tried to optimize my life, what would it change? How would I optimize the life of a mouse or a gorilla if I could communicate with them? How do I see the limits of their intelligence? What could be the best life for various other species? And many, many other questions of the same type. In fact, over time, there was a shift in my context. For the first time I felt that I was trying to overcome the limits of my own mind. I was able to see where those walls were. Some of the limitations were obvious, such as mental arithmetic and memory. But I started to try other frontiers as well. How many different concepts can fit in my head at the same time? How accurately can I sense time, temperature, or mass without measuring instruments? How many ways do I really know about solving problems, and what are their advantages and disadvantages? I began to study the brain in a little more detail and compare my observed mental limits with what was known about the physical structure of the brain. The latest research in this area is amazing. By pumping the brain with psychoactive substances, you can deprive a person of consciousness. By electrically stimulating a cluster of neurons, one can create experiences that the subject of the experiment will describe as spiritual. It is possible to surgically remove a person's ability to play the piano. As I better understood the human mind, I realized that the main problem with the question of the best life is that it requires more intelligence than we have to answer it. To find out what is the best possible life, which is mathematically an optimization problem, you have to know all possible lives in general. And that requires so much data that we can't handle yet. Imagine that there are only 1 million possible options for your life. To choose the best one, you need to look at all of them, apply some evaluation criteria, and then choose the one with the highest score. This approach has 3 big problems. The first is that there are too many options to consider them wisely. The second problem is that you have to accurately predict the future in order to know how each life will end. And the third problem is that you have to work out or come up with an evaluation criterion. It is obvious that the first 2 problems cannot be solved now, but what about the third? The third problem generally coincides with the one that Aristotle tried to approach, the criterion for evaluation. Living virtuously is one possible answer, but still vague. So here we have some serious problems. First, the search space for possible solutions is too large to fully explore it. It is so large that we cannot even grasp it as a whole. And second, we need to find a yardstick that makes it possible to reasonably compare one option with another. A yardstick that doesn't depend too much on the unknown future. In search. Let's tackle the first problem, the giant search space problem. First of all, it is impossible to find a provably optimal solution. Thus, the truthful answer to the question about the best option for life is 1. It is incomprehensible. We are not yet smart enough to figure it out. This doesn't sound very satisfying, but it can actually help us a little. Now we are faced with the question, how can we get closer to the optimal solution? Fortunately, mathematics has an answer to this question. It's heuristics. It follows from its rules that if the entire search space is too large, then you need to explore that part of it that will help you get closer to the optimal solution. An example is the problem of finding an extremum. Imagine that you need to explore a large 3D map and you want to find the highest point. Using heuristics, you start at a random point on the map and just check that each step takes you up. When you can no longer climb, then you have reached the top, the local maximum. Without exploring the rest of the map, you can't be sure that your last mountain was the highest on the map. So you can continue exploring by starting at different points on the map and using the same heuristics. Until you explore the entire map, you can't be sure you found the global maximum, but the more you explore, the more confidence you gain. But what does this mean for human life? And the same is the approach to life by the method of searching for an extremum. You try to live one way for a bit, then you try to improve it by lifting it higher. You change some of its parameters to improve it. For example, you might be trying to lose weight, make more money, or improve your relationships. Any of these can be considered a step up. And you just go up until there is nowhere to go up. Naturally, the problem with this approach lies in the nature of the heuristic. You can get stuck at a local maximum that is much lower than the possible global maximum. The peak you are trying to conquer may be just a grain of sand in the grand scheme of things. Another problem may be that you may not have enough life to climb just one mountain. You may die before you can climb any appreciable height with this approach. But as human beings, we have at our disposal a powerful tool that alleviates this problem: the imagination. We do not need to physically check all combinations of possible options. We can test them in our mind. But this method will only work if our mental map of reality is a good approximation of real reality. In other words, it would be better for our model to coincide with reality, otherwise our approximations will be erroneous, and the results obtained will be useless. Remember, self-discipline, acceptance. To have a chance of success, we need to accept reality as it is, all without exception, no matter what we have to understand about ourselves and how much we hate to understand it. Otherwise, our model will be full of problems. Things that seem to work in the imagination won't work in the real world. The more accurate your mental model of reality, the greater your ability to intelligently choose different ways of living. This means that you must know yourself in all your nakedness, both good and bad and evil. You must develop a deep understanding of your true nature. This is related to yesterday's article about matching your beliefs with your actions. You must be internally consistent, otherwise your model will only produce garbage that you cannot trust. I'm not sure everyone can do it well. It takes a high level of intelligence and concentration to imagine what an alternative life might be like and evaluate it objectively. But we all have to do it. We can only do our best. I think the best solution would be to consider different ways of life, visualize them vividly, and evaluate their strengths and weaknesses. After doing this with a number of options, I can't say how many you need, the more the better, you choose one and start living that way. In the meantime, you remain always open to imagining other possibilities, and if you find an option that is superior to your current lifestyle, you switch to a new, higher life. How do you compare one life to another? Now we need to consider the evaluation criterion. What does up mean? How do we compare one life to another? Many people have tried to answer this question. One of the most popular answers given today is happiness. We are told to do what will make us the happiest. Strive for pleasure. Avoid pain. Almost all of the personal development literature I've read uses happiness as the absolute goal of life in one way or another. But I think that happiness is just an excuse. Happiness is just an emotion. And devoting your entire life to the goal of achieving and maintaining one emotional state is clearly suboptimal. As for me, I am very cheerful in life, and it is easy to make me happy and peaceful. Happiness and well-being can be maintained mainly by a very healthy diet and plenty of exercise. I have already learned well how to manage my emotions and become happy, so I am sure that I can achieve something more. Even if we stretch the concept of happiness to include the fulfillment of our destiny or prosperity, it will still remain an excuse. By answering the question of how to live in this way, we are only throwing the question of our emotional part of the mind. We say that emotions give us the answer to how we live. That is, assuming that if we feel the fulfillment of our destiny, then we live optimally. I don't see any logical reason to consider this answer correct, given that I know how emotions work. Not good enough. For these reasons, I have rejected all answers suggesting that the optimal way of life can be found in some emotional state or feeling. I can consciously choose how I feel just by shifting my focus. No particular action can evoke a feeling in me that I could not achieve simply by directing my imagination in a certain direction. I can evoke self-emotions winking face. And then we have a host of self-help teachers who define the purpose of life in terms of being successful, getting rich, having perfect relationships, and so on. Well, as you're probably already suspecting, this is just a marketing splurge with nothing of substance behind it. Most of these books try to show you how to achieve optimal results within the existing social context, but as we have seen, even if you manage to reach the supposed pinnacle there, you will still not be living optimally. You will spend your entire life trying to climb a small grain of sand and leave most of your potential greatness intact. The way I have chosen to approach this task is to look at my life in the context of the whole picture of my clearest understanding of reality. It means looking at the history of life, to the extent that we can understand it, the possible future of life, and where it will lead, and the present state of life. I felt that the best possible human life should be considered within the framework of all life, past, present, and predictable future. When I look at the evolution of life on Earth, I see the power of evolution as something much higher than my personal existence. I see that life continues to increase its complexity, its intelligence, and its chances of survival in general. When I put myself in this context, I see that I have three main options. I can work to cooperate with evolution, I can work against it, or I can ignore it. My awareness of myself as a human allows me to make this choice consciously, as close as possible to the optimum. I decided that the best possible life must lie in cooperation with evolution, and not in working against it. So to me, this means two things. 1. To work to evolve oneself as a person to the highest possible degree, and 2. To work to allow life itself to evolve to the highest possible degree. It turns out that these goals are largely compatible, since there is a positive feedback between self-evolution and the evolution of the environment around you. If you only work on yourself, your environment will eventually hold you back. You will be like Tarzan living among the monkeys. And if you're only working to help others, that won't be optimal either, as you'll only be able to teach them what you know now, but you'll never improve your knowledge and ability to teach. That is, a balance of both is required. For me, it translates into working on my personal growth and helping others grow. It has become my means of mastering the best possible life I can hope to live. So what does it mean to grow? For me, this means constantly striving to improve my most powerful evolutionary acquisitions, which I consider my intellect, my consciousness, and my knowledge of reality. And in order to help others grow as well, I must consistently continue to improve my communication skills. I see the main purpose of my life as service to the process of evolution. For me, this is more important than anything else. Everything else in my life is secondary to this and must prove that it fits into this plan. Will you be interested in getting a job and earning money if you have the opportunity to consciously participate in the evolution of life itself? To me, all other potential ways of life are but pale shadows in comparison. Let's now relate this to the concept of heuristics. This results in the following general strategy. 1. Try to imagine the best possible life for yourself, using service to the process of evolution itself as a criterion. Live it, experience it. Point 3. If you are convinced that there is a better way to serve the process of evolution than yours, go for it. Here is my answer to the question of how to live: to invest most of my life in the pursuit of growth. For me, it's completely natural. If we cannot figure out how to live optimally, then the best solution is to develop a greater ability to do so. If your computer is unable to do what you need it to do, then you must take the time to work on its improvement. I find that this answer also fits well with the Aristotelian concept of virtue. Intellect offers direction, while virtue helps pave the way. I believe that both are essential for the best possible life. Although of these, the intellect is still the strongest, since the virtues originated from the human mind. One can think of the virtues as the least costly intellectual methods. If a truly intelligent decision is hampered by too much data, you can turn back to the virtues and trust that at least they won't be stupid choices. When in doubt, be honest, honorable, and brave. Brain 2.0. If you suddenly find yourself living like a monkey, then you can accept this life, dedicate yourself to constantly eating bananas and try to be a good monkey, or you can try to become more than an ape and evolve into a human. Having done this, all your monkey goals and achievements will seem completely meaningless compared to your new human abilities. How stupid would goals like building a business or increasing sales for more advanced species seem? On the evolutionary ladder, we are now just a bunch of monkeys. But if we continue to grow, we will soon become much larger. It is likely that computer technology will merge more closely with our brains, making us smarter and more capable. But even until that happens, we can continue to learn more about our brains and use them to their limits. Let's stop living on 3% of our brain power and turn it on to almost 100%. There are many ways to consciously assist the evolutionary process, and our ability to do so right now is, of course, limited, although the boundaries are being pushed wider every year. I think that in the course of a lifetime, a person living today and dedicating his life to helping the evolution of our species will experience a dramatic and significant effect. We still remember Aristotle for what he did. What could we achieve if thousands of us living today dedicated our lives to a similar goal? I can't prove it to you, but I think I've found that the more I work on aligning my life with the process of evolution, the easier and less effort my life flows, as if I'm being pulled by a magnet. During the past year, my life has been going very well, and I feel like I can think more clearly than ever. I recently had a context switch last year, but I feel like I'm getting stronger every month. It is a sense of clarity that this is exactly what I should be doing with my life. Self-discipline is still needed, but I have become stronger and more able to apply it properly. I think the reason for this is that I finally felt like I was living the best life possible with what I know now. When I try to imagine something better, it's just an increase in my ability to do the same thing, not a significant change in the way I do things. However, getting to this state was far from easy, and I am sure that there are no less changes ahead of me. This is the nature of growth. Previous goals are constantly in the process of becoming obsolete. Tomorrow we will explore the question of how to translate a high-level idea of how to live into a personal goal that can actually be achieved. And the next day, we'll look at how to break that goal down into tasks, projects, and activities and get moving. Steve Pavlin's article was translated by Andrew Jezhara. The Meaning of Life: How Do We Live? Part 1.